I'd like to say thanks a lot, Patrick, for joining in and accepting to answer a few questions. I'm sure we'll get some really unique insights. So I think we just jump into it directly and go for the first question, which is, so at MRI, you deal with the full spectrum of the built environment, commercial, residential, and you also deal with the full spectrum within each of these spectrum, which is those who know technology and those who just use it for the bare minimum, right? And I'm
Yes.
certain that they have completely different approaches to how they're using technology. And I'd be quite curious to understand, firstly, what is the difference between the techie and the non-techie side of people in their respective industries? And then what's the difference between the industries and what can they learn from each other?
Excellent. So Arthur, it's nice to talk to you again. Glad to see you. You're looking well during these times. So it's really interesting because as you mentioned, MRI serves an amazing spectrum of clients, not only in the sectors, but in size and scale. So I think the most obvious differentiator that we've seen through the beginning of this situation all the way now is that the size and maturity of the company has been the first differentiator on how quickly they've been to productivity and effectivity. So you can imagine, we serve the large scale enterprise space, literally Fortune 1000 type companies, all the way down to SMB. And in some cases, this is, one person or family that owns a few buildings, maybe one building even, with some of our products. And so in that vein, you think about the maturity of their operations. Does every employee have a laptop? Do they have even a VPN connectivity set up that they can reach their server back at the office if they don't have any cloud services? Do they have access to their enterprise systems? Do they have access to their enterprise files? Are they able to pay their bills without having the checkbook? Literally, right? And so you think about these very, very common aspects of doing business, and these smaller, less mature organizations have really found themselves in a further speed to productivity because of access to things like that. Now, if you step aside from just the concept of computers and laptops and printers and access to things remotely, let's talk about the more software side of it as it relates to Proptech specifically. Many of these organizations, the good news is the SMB space, many of them are already using SaaS cloud-based software, right? So in that vein, their people should be able to access their enterprise systems via the web. But with size and scale also makes some choices around products that they've implemented for their residents and clients. So imagine being able to take electronic payments, being able to use electronic signatures, being able to do online leasing, online renewals, emergency communication with clients. The larger or the mid to larger scale technology proficient businesses have at least rolled out many of these technologies. And so in addition to the human factor of accessibility, the enterprise software factor is significantly better on the larger end of the market. Surprisingly, the residential sector on the larger end of the market has been better than the commercial. And the reason is that the residential sector has already done a better job at communicating with their residents. Online leasing, how people look for apartments, how people communicate with their property managers has already been very much a thing in everywhere around the world. Whereas in the commercial space, even though you're talking about size and scale, it is still a little bit more back room. One administrative office gets all the bills in. Joe or Jane pays the bills once a month. And it's so much more large and consolidated into a central location. The adoption of some of those commercial technologies wasn't as necessary. So it's really odd because I wouldn't have guessed that when we started.
That's really interesting. So, I mean, this is a very specific statistic. I don't know if you know this, but let's say what was the penetration of the technology before the crisis, and what has that increased to right now? So, how is that?
No, no, it's interesting, and certainly when I tell you the amount of inquiries we get, we still have a very small population. We literally have 13,000 plus enterprise size clients, and thousands and thousands of even smaller clients. We still do have some heritage clients that are using some of our older on-premise solutions. And I will tell you, the amount of requests we're getting for people to move to SaaS is at an all-time high. So I love that. The request for things like payment solutions, portal solutions, signature solutions, our communication suite, very much at an all-time high. Now, will they actually buy, implement, and adopt during the crisis, or will this be a catalyst for new priorities when the world opens back up? I'm not sure yet. What I can tell you is I'm surprised at the continued new business we are getting. We are in a situation where our business has continued to operate not only in our ability to serve our clients, but in our ability to serve them with new products and services that they're asking for. I would not have believed that people made these types of choices while we were locked down, but they are. And I think, to your point, it's because of the need for these remote type access solutions.
Okay, I see. I see. And then if we move on to actually discussing some more into the world of automation, right? Because both resi and commercial buildings are running skeleton crews right now because of social distancing. They don't want to be, they just want to really have the key workers there. So what kind of automation solutions have they been looking into, if you got some insights into those? And are
And
they
you're
likely,
talking specific commercial, Arthur?
I'm talking about commercial and residential. So
Okay,
I know there's a split between the two of them, but I'm sure
sure.
there's insights from both, because residential right now is at full capacity, right? Commercial is,
Right,
so the needs
exactly.
we have are very different.
Right,
I'm quite curious to know what kind of solutions are they looking for, and if you think they'll stick over time, because that's what
sure.
I'm sure.
Absolutely. So first and foremost, I would tell you that in the prop tech space, the availability of innovative software is greater than the adoption of that uh, innovative software. So the good news is we are in an industry where the availability of solutions far outweighs what people are adopting. So the question is, what should they be adopting? What are they adopting, and why aren't they adopting certain things? As it relates to adoption, it is rare that the solutions are ever adopted and then turned back. So you said, what would be the future be? The reality is, in most cases, innovation is a one-way street. Once you begin using it, it is in, right? I mean, can you imagine, deciding, okay, you know what, that wonderful stereo in your car, you're going to go back to an 8-track player, right? You would never do that, right? But imagine the day when someone said, you're going to buy a car without the 8-track player, and you had piles and piles of 8-track cartridges. Now, Arthur, you're a young man, you don't even know what an 8-track is, but it's usually one-way adoption. So what are the things that people need to adopt? In most cases, again, large scale companies have systems where they can do their facilities management, online work orders, online payment of the bills. Vendor payments is huge. And I will tell you, I can tell you just from MRI's receivables, we are seeing now the companies that don't have automated payable systems that are our clients, and some that do. On those that do, they are continuing to routinely pay as they normally would because it's electronic, they don't have to be at the office, and so forth. What we're seeing on the folks with non-automation is we won't get a check for a month, and then all of a sudden on a Monday, we'll get millions and millions of dollars in because somebody went to the office and actually was able to access the systems and the check stock and so forth. So there's an interesting disparity between the two. But what are the technologies people should be adopting? When you're in property management, whether you're an owner, an operator, whether you're in residential or commercial, or even managing your own leases as a corporate occupier, you need to be able to communicate with your residents and tenants. So as it relates to communication, the portal solutions, texting solutions, alert management solutions, the ability to say where the new policies are. Hey, guess what? Effective immediately, no one's able to use that back door of the building because of safety for health. Getting that message out is huge. You have to have automated communications. My hypothesis is that of all the technologies, the fastest and easiest to implement, either now or post-pandemic, for those that don't have it, are automated communication systems. Systems where the telephone answers and says, hey, what are you looking for? Are you looking to lease? Are you looking to ask a question about, you have an issue in your flat? Without a human answering the phone. And so those automated communication suites, those digital answering systems, the ability to manage the office digitally. Someone answers, the computer answers the phone, it routes it to the right person, it creates an order for that person to see it back at their home. All of those things are paramount. So I would say that's number one. Number two is certainly continuing to run the business as it relates to new business. And so what's new business for a property manager? That's new tenants and renewing tenants. If you don't have an online portal where you can sign up prospects and existing residents and tenants to renew or first time, you're going to be in a pickle in this situation. It's just a fact. You need to be able to do it online. So if you're doing it online, what does that mean? That means connected to screening systems for background checks. That means being connected to online payment systems for security deposits and first rents and renewal agreements. That means being able to do electronic signatures through contracts where you don't have to be in the office. That means being able to access solutions where you can tour a property by yourself without a human walking you around, where you can look at the inventory of availability in a community without speaking to someone on the phone. These are systems that are paramount, and there's, right now, there are the haves and there are the have-nots.
And do you feel like the have-nots, the people who do not have that system, are scrambling right now to keep business as usual?
Yeah, no doubt. Like, I will tell you, I actually called yesterday, I called a hotel at my son's university to unfortunately cancel our rooms because their graduation was canceled. And so I dialed the number, and this was on the Sheraton website. So I dialed the number, and you're calling a Sheraton, so you're thinking this is, you know, the real deal. But you're calling a Sheraton, and then Sheratons in most cases are run by local property, you know, hotel management firms in the local areas. So different than Sheraton reservations, I was getting specifically to the operator of the hotel. Ultimately, this woman answers the phone. She's on her cell phone. And she said the phone was routed to her cell phone. She has no access to her systems. She couldn't hear me very well, and she wasn't able to transfer me. So then I thought to myself, you know, I'm so biased to the solutions that MRI provides. Things like being able to have phone systems that route to people's computers and their laptops and different numbers with seamless integration. We do that, no problem. I moved 1,700 employees remote within 48 hours in 33 offices. And if you called any phone number at MRI, it rang and was answered with all the systems and technology as if they were in the office. You would have no idea. In fact, I say to myself, why am I paying leases? Why do I pay my
We
why?
want the commercial people to hear that.
No, I know, but you know what, Arthur, and to your question of will the future be, I think that this will change the paradigm of how businesses operate forever. And you know that on the commercial side, people were already changing the way they operated. Less space per person, more community social collaboration space. You know, the flex space, you know, obviously the WeWorks of the world, and you know, brands like that. That was already a thing. There were already plenty of companies that were running very, very virtual in many regions. I think people are pleasantly surprised of their ability to operate in this situation and actually operate it well. I think this will have an impact on the amount of space people keep and retain moving forward. And I think it will have an impact on how people hire, our willingness to bring on someone who's remote. I mean, there you are today. You and I are on two different continents, and we are having this meeting as perfect and clear. And then, so I asked myself, why the hell did I ever fly to Central Europe anyway? I could just do this on the phone.
That's true. That's true.
You know.
And to your point, for example, with our company, Deepfinity, we have been hiring globally from the get-go. So we've never actually had an office for everyone. So we have people in Mexico, Armenia, Philippines, UK, Switzerland, working on the business. And I mean, the one problem we have is the time zones, but we managed to kind of find
Exactly.
times to connect everything. But other than that, it gives us access to a global pool of talent. And then you
Exactly.
put systems into place, and then you just spend on software instead of an office.
So Arthur, that's interesting. Let's just, I mean, it would be a horrible reality, but let's just say this went on for a really, really, really long time. Is it crazy to think we wouldn't adjust some time zones for communication? Right. I mean, now you're talking about like amazing changes, but to your point, that's probably our biggest challenge which has always been a challenge with a global company. You know, how do you get, you know, North America, Europe, and Asia Pacific all on the phone at the same time without screwing up someone's personal life?
Yeah.
It's not possible. Somebody's got to take the heat. Someone's staying up late or getting up early.
Definitely. You got to put on rotation who's taking it.
Exactly.
I think we can move on to the next question then. So you are a champion for the open platform.
Sure.
And I first heard you mention that in 2016 and you reiterated in 2019. I'm quite curious, has anybody leveraged the whole concept of the open platform to build custom systems during this crisis and to help them automate their systems right now?
Right. So I would say right now people are primarily focusing on their business continuity plans. They're primarily focusing on you know, trying to stay business as usual. As it relates to new things that they might need, I'm certain that there are people that are using our toolkit to make special reports and so forth. But I would tell you what we're seeing most often is leveraging the fact that the platform can be quickly plug and play with other products. So by the way, if you didn't have payments and you want to turn payments on, I don't have to come to your office for 3 months to implement it. Because of the way our platform is designed and developed, I can give you MRI payments, or I can give you one of 10 other payment companies, and I can do that remotely with our architecture.
One foot. It goes online.
Exactly. As it relates to some special functionality, one of the things that we've been able to do based on the solutions, you know, we have some different solutions in Africa and Europe and North America and ANZ. And those solutions each require some unique reporting or functionality changes to manage the unique payment terms that owners and operators are giving their residents. We immediately were able to deploy that unique functionality and deploy it into our application exchange, where our clients can literally download. I mean, think of it as like the Apple Store, where you can say, you know what, I'm going to take an update and I'm going to go in there and I need this functionality so that I can now track you know, delinquent payments different than I did before because I've now approved them. And I'm going to download that subset of some functionality into the system. Our platform allows us to do that. So we've been very effective at doing that. Again, as it relates to the platform, is the access to data. So whether you're using MRI analytics, whether you're using, you know, MRI's Investment Central solutions, we have a data layer that whether our clients getting it directly or our clients using another vendor's solution, that access to the data is power. I mean, pretty much every day you open up your email in PropTech and somebody's putting out a report. Here's some analysis on this. Here's some analysis on who's paying. Here's some analysis on, the best commercial vendors in outdoor strip malls, things like that. We're making sure that our clients are able to leverage our platform and our data mechanics to access that data. And I will selfishly plug the one area we haven't talked about, and that is artificial intelligence. And so when you think about, and I think this will be an after the pandemic transformation much faster. So we have tons of clients that have leveraged our MRI lease intelligence, which is part of our Leverton Intelligence division. Our Leverton Intelligence applications allow our clients to take what was historically paper-based data, even if it was scanned and PDFs, and everybody has thousands of papers, and turn that into really smart data to make decisions. Now let's think about situations these vendors are in now. For instance, everyone's getting emails or letters, these owners and operators of malls and commercial buildings, and they're saying we're invoking the force majeure clause in the contract and we're not paying. Now imagine that for the last 20 years, this owner or operator of that mall or that commercial complex has hundreds, maybe thousands of leases that are all different, that have different terms in them. Some are electronic, some are in PDF, some are in paper form because it renewed from 40 years ago. I mean, you think Sears didn't sign a lease 50 years ago in some of these malls, right? And did they change it? Maybe they didn't. The use of lease intelligence or artificial intelligence to read these documents, to quickly understand what you have, why you have it, and how to respond to it is paramount. And I will tell you, I believe at least for MRI, that will be one of the biggest areas of uptick in future adoption.
That's really interesting. So with these events which come, they basically cause an uptick in a certain type of activity, right? So everyone will be doing the same thing at the same time to mitigate the problems they have, and the current capacity that these landlords have, they cannot deal with the current capacity of requests. So they need to find ways to leverage their workforce, and that's what AI does at the end of the day. It doesn't replace workforce; it leverages their ability. So one person can do the work of 10.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you said that, right? Because, you used to hear in the olden days, again, I'm showing you some of my age, we used to talk about robots taking away people's jobs, right? That was the big thing. Oh, if you have robots, you're going to reduce people's jobs. The great thing with artificial intelligence is it allows humans to proactively respond to the right things at the right time, right? And that is power. That's not an elimination of brain power. That's an addition of brain power, both human and machine.
100%. It gives them leverage effectively.
Exactly.
Yeah, definitely. Now, we've talked about all of these great solutions, about the underlying technologies, and also what you guys do specifically at MRI. Now the next point is actually, how do we implement that? How do we accelerate the deployment of these technologies? Because at the end of the day, I would say that the built environment is its own worst enemy. So it is traditionally more slow moving than other industries to implement tech. So what advice would you give to both the built environment and to the prop tech companies trying to work with them to accelerate this?
Nice. Thank you for that question, because part of the things that I try to say, when I'm up on stage at conferences and so forth, is I'm always talking about, and again, I'm biased, right? I'm a software vendor. I'm trying to sell my wares. But I think it is interesting that the prop tech space, which, by the way, for years, the real estate space was a laggard in leveraging technology. And the good news is that vendors like MRI and many of our partners and many of our competitors around the globe have really caught up and embraced the innovation. And our space has more technology available than it ever has in its history. But real estate is generally, I always say it's still a good old boys and girls network, right? It's People like to do things the way they do things, and there is still a bit of a, a heritage culture to how things are done. And there's also always a fear that tenants and residents are going to negatively react to change. So when we talk about, hey, I can't believe you don't have a portal for online renting, we'll have some customers that say, you know what, Pat, we like the personal touch. We like the personal approach. We want to have a human answer the phone. When you walk into our office, we want you to see Joe and Jane and so forth, which, by the way, those are wonderful attributes. Those are great. And there's a huge part of the population that really appreciates that. But there's a more growing side of the population that the concept of sitting down with Joe and Jane in that office 3 hours away in a city they're moving to when they just want a 1-bedroom apartment with a pool that allows their dog is horrible, the concept of them having to be there. And so our owners and our operators are, they always think that they're going to upset their residents. Well, we can't change to electronic payments because our residents would have to re-input their information on the portal. Or we don't want to switch from the voicemail system we have because everyone would have to reset up online with a new password, and we don't want to annoy our residents. We get that all the time. I think my first advice for owners and operators of commercial real estate, both residential, corporate, retail, office, whatever it may be, look at the resiliency of the human population. Look at the resiliency of how people immediately got up, moved, retrenched, accessed technology, and kept doing their jobs as best, in some cases better than they did before. And understand and appreciate that people will adapt and people will adopt, and they will do it whether you ask them to or they need to. You know, it's kind of like in the ecosystem, right? Like life happens. Technology will happen. Let it happen. So that would be my first advice. And then my next advice is that, you know, preparing for that next magical unknown. Who would have thought that 2020 would have brought this? The concept of waiting is not something we should do in 2020. If the technologies are out there, the more quickly we adapt to it, the more quickly the next technology will arrive. So the slower we are to adopt, we are actually squelching further innovation, because at the end of the day, companies need to make money. Now, this is probably not a popular opinion, but I'm speaking as a software vendor. I'm not going to just keep making the next thing if I can't make any money on it.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's that you know, crazy old fact of business needs to be profitable.
That is true.
Yeah.
I can vouch to that myself. 100%.
Right. Right.
And to build on that, would you suggest that a lot of the asset managers and owners, they start looking into hiring CTOs and CIOs, people who have the domain expertise and are kind of both from the tech and the real estate world, which can kind of bridge the gap internally?
So let me understand your question. You're saying, you know, companies that historically were not very tech savvy, should they begin to incorporate that into the executive level and strategy of their
Yes.
business?
Yeah.
100%. And I will tell you that when I look at my install base, I can quickly point to the companies where the CTO or the CIO or the SVP of security and systems is at the executive level, at the senior leadership team. I can tell you just by how that organization operates, which ones embrace that at the board level. And it is a significant difference. And it is also the significant difference, in my opinion, in those that will be able to sustain storms and those that will be able to win after the storm. So yes, I think it's a must. The days of, hey, let's just have it report to finance or have it report to the property services group, those need to be those need to be gone. It needs to be fundamental to a company's strategy. Technology is non-industry specific industry. Everybody must have it. And what's
Everybody's
wonderful, exactly, and what's wonderful, I always say prop tech is great too, because people always say, well, what industry? I say, well, we serve the real estate vertical. The fact is that everybody's in the real estate vertical. Own, operate, or work in it. Every client, we do corporate real estate. So we provide solutions that help clients manage their leases, right? So, just think about, big retailers and, companies all over the globe that are managing leases. They have to manage those leases as an expense, and we provide them solutions to do that as well. So even if you're not in the real estate vertical, real estate is a major expense and an aspect you need to think about.
Definitely, 100%. Wow, that's very interesting. Thanks for the insights. Really, really eye-opening. It's always great to get someone's really unique insights, which have a unique paradigm and perspective on what's happening in the situation. So thanks a lot for that. I really appreciate it.
Well, Arthur, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I love what you guys are doing to promote the thought leadership in prop tech. So thank you for your time as well, and be safe to you and your family.
Thanks.